Yeah, as you said, thank you so much for the opportunity. This is a presentation on work in progress that we've embarked on. It's mainly part of the research to develop an organizational resilience model, and currently at a stage where we just want to do a bit of test as to whether the model could be, in the future utilized and measurable. We can just go into the introduction. Today's organizations are increasingly being shaped by digital transformation, which obviously creates, and everybody would be aware, new opportunities, efficiency, innovation, and value creation. However, in some instances, and the changes that are presented actually have introduces vulnerabilities, particularly for those organizations that are operating critical national infrastructure, such as the national payment system. And that's what we selected to test the organizational resilience model for a national payment system. The diagram that you show, it shows digital transformation interacts with the key socio-technical dimensions. On the left-hand side, you see that technology, science, innovation actually present or stimulates transformation and presents opportunities for organizations. While on the right-hand side, you see that organizational resilience depends on the capabilities such as, anticipation, adaptability, and recoverability of systems. And the center is driven by mainly culture, people-centered complexities, strategy of organizations, vision, and emerging customer focused models. And in the environment that is currently impacting most organizations, there is a lot of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity that organizations have to grapple with. And this leads to a core research question for me around how digital transformation and cyber threat forces on influence dynamic resilience behavior for a national payment system. So that is what initiated this, call it a case study. And the purpose of the research is to develop a system dynamics model that captures these complex interactions and provide a simulation that can examine how resilience actually emerges or degrades or even improves over time. And this could potentially be used by support policymakers and practitioners to identify leverage points within the payment ecosystem to enable a more robust and adaptable response to disruptions, whether it's operational, technological, or environmental. So most of the challenges that the national payment system is focused on is mainly that influenced by, cyber crime, system threats. Financial sector faces escalation of cyber attacks, undermining operational continuity and trust to the system, which is a big item in terms of, how you use the system. Most of us would not even do online purchases if we can't necessarily trust the system. And there needs to be a more robust institutional controls in place. Payment institutions must implement strong cyber resilience mechanisms, effect controls that minimize widespread disruptions. And also the financial market infrastructure is foundational platform is within the national payment system. So you can see the criticality of the national payment system. And looking at also the future is that the payment system needs to be adapted or adaptable to future technological changes, such as AI that everybody is now talking about. How do you create a flexible and adaptable system that is able to change with time over the years? Looking at for example, a 20-year view of uh, the national payment system. So the key factors that are driving the national payment system, quite a lot of regulatory environment, especially with regards to, the Reserve Bank, the National Treasury, that influences what is required for a national payment system. So those are some of the constraints that the system has to grapple with. Population growth, quite a key factor in terms of being able to service an increasing amount of customer base. As you can see, the smartphone user projections are showing that in the next 3 years, they'll be moving from about 16 million users to 21 million, and all of those potentially could be, tapping into the national payment system. And as also the factor that from a GDP growth point of view for the banking sector, the banking sector contributes about 85%, call it, of the asset value, and from a national GDP growth on an annual basis, it actually contributes 20% of that. And quite a key player from a employment perspective, major driver of financial services provision, key employer in financial services, and the rise in the cyber threats or cyber attacks has also been a factor. Digital banking fraud losses increased from 2020, or based on the 2020 figures, about 310 million. In 2021, we can see that increased to about 438 million in a space of a year, and it's expected to also be increasing over the next coming few years. Just to put everybody, this is a busy slide, but it's just to give everyone a high-level conceptual design of the national payment system. You see that we've got the dealer agreement section where all organizations like retailers, wholesalers, informal sector, and the formal market tap into the payment system. And there is payment initiation, clearing, settlement phase, and then the payment finalization. And therefore, at the end, the deal is actually completed. This is quite a complex sort of system, which has potentially, vulnerabilities in all the points of entry into the system. This is just supposed to provide a contextual grounding of the subsequent system dynamics model that we've tried to develop. And I'll go into that. As part of the research, we looked at also what are the organizational resilience dimensions that we focus on, and these have been workshopped with some experts from the financial services sector. I'm not going to dwell into these. Mostly they're pretty much obvious: adaptability, things like flexibility, improvisation, the recovery of the system, the robustness, reliability, and the adaptive sort of capacity of the system is quite key to the resilience of that system. As part of the systemogram, which we're not going to dwell with much, is the environmental disruption. Focus for this section from the systemogram, we're able to develop we're able to develop a conceptual model which looks at 5 key areas of a complete organizational resilience. And the causal loop that we focus on for this case study is the system operations resilience, which is the stuff in blue. So we then took this portion of the model and tried to almost map it to a known or archetype model, causal loop that we could easily uh, 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 be able to model and simulate. So if I can go into a little bit more detail onto this, is the 4 main loops that we looked at: the resilience and recoverability loop, which is a reinforcing loop. As the resilience increases, so does the system's ability to actually recover from a disruption, and it improves the recoverability. In turn, reinforces the sort of the resilience, and this obviously creates a virtuous circle. And then the next loop is around adaptation and the flexibility of the system. The adaptation and flexibility enhances the ability to respond effectively to sort of emerging disruptions, and the greater adaptability forces a higher resilience, which in turn further strengthens the adaptive capacity. And the other 2 balancing loops for adaptive capacity and the resource component. The resource is the funding or the financial component of the model, which is mainly how you drive adaptive capacity. You have to spend money for people to improve on the technology and to have new ideas and be skilled to new technologies that are coming up. And then the last one is around robustness and the change with regards to resistance. And these are obviously influenced by the dynamic pathways of digital transformation and the disruption, and which is where the focus is around the disruption due to cyber attack and cyber threats towards a system. What we then did is to obviously taking from some of the work that Kone did in terms of how do you estimate, and I'm not going to dwell into these few slides, but as to how you estimate or formulate equations with regards to effectiveness. This one indicates the
Dumisani, you have it less than 5 minutes to wrap up.
I'm gonna wrap off now. Digital transformation and the adaptation to technology. This is for adaptive capacity and the effect on redundancy, adaptive capacity on the effect on the population side. The last one was the digital transformation and using data, secondary data that is available out there. One was able to then develop some regression models, which therefore were then utilized. And these the top 2 graphs are related to GDP, and modeling those to get a function that might estimate GDP growth, and based on available secondary data. And the 2 bottom graphs mainly indicating some of the incidences that have been reported by organizations such as CEBRIC, and using that old data to actually develop sort of equations as to how incidences or disruptive cyber attacks are happening on the system. And we then developed a stock and flow diagram, which at this stage we would want to necessarily find the guidance as to its reliability, and also whether it does make sense or not. It's got two stocks, mainly the resilience stocks and the funding stock, as well as some of the main flows, which I have necessarily spoken to. GDP is a driver of the funding on the system, and how that influences resilience, and how it drives adaptive capacity on the system. And the results, based on the simulation utilizing Vincem as a tool, found quite some interesting um, results out of that model, which also obviously indicate how resilience actually develops at different recoverability points, and by changing the recoverability, how the resilient stock actually flows. And you can see that it's got quite a spike in the earlier times, which speaks to how cyber attack can influence the resilience on the system, and it tapers down based on the pressure being implemented or impacted on as cyber attack continuously impact the national payment system.
Thank you very much, Dumisani. I'm enjoying your presentation, but you are above time.
Thank you.
Yeah, we want to open the floor for some questions. The floor